I'm Jake. I'm 32 years old, and my own parents helped my brother steal from me and total my truck, then told me to let it go because we're family. But before I tell you about the phone call that led to police showing up at my front door and the look on their faces when they realized I had outsmarted them all, do me a solid and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always cool to see how far these stories travel. Alright, let's get into it. The worst day of my life started like any other Tuesday. It was a cold, miserable day in Portland, Oregon. The kind of damp, bone-chilling cold where the sky is just a flat, gray sheet that promises rain but never delivers. I just wrapped up a 12-hour shift at the construction site. As a foreman, my days are a chaotic symphony of ringing phones, shouting workers, and the constant roar of heavy machinery. All I ever wanted at the end of the day was to get home, kick off my heavy, steel-toed boots, and sink into the worn cushions of my couch. My ticket to that peace was my 2016 Ford F-150. It was my pride and joy. I'd bought it used with money I'd saved for years, paid it off in a record 3 years by taking every overtime shift I could get, and I kept that machine pristine. It wasn't just a truck to me, it was a symbol. It was 4 wheels and a steel frame that proved I could build something for myself, something solid, reliable, and entirely my own. But when I walked out to the employee parking lot that evening, the wet asphalt steaming under the security lights, my spot was empty. Just a dark, vacant patch of pavement where my truck should have been. A knot of pure ice formed in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't right. I'm meticulous about where I park. I immediately pulled out my phone and called my mom, my voice tighter than a guitar string. Mom, have you heard from Mark? My truck's gone. There was a pregnant pause on the other end, a silence that spoke volumes. Oh, honey, she finally said, her voice laced with that overly sweet, placating tone she always used when she was about to make an excuse for him. Mark had a very, very important job interview all the way across town. His car, you know how it is, it wasn't starting again. He had to borrow yours. Borrowed it, I repeated, my voice dangerously low. Mom, he didn't ask. I have the only key right here in my pocket. Well, you know your brother? She chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. He's resourceful. He found the spare you keep in the magnetic case under the fender. Don't be mad, Jake. He's really trying to get his life together this time. I hung up, my hand shaking with a rage so profound it felt like a physical illness. 2 agonizing hours later, a vehicle pulled into my driveway. It was my truck, or what was left of it. The entire passenger side was brutally caved in, a horrific scar of twisted metal and shattered glass. The side mirror was completely gone, and the headlight was a fractured, broken eye staring blankly into the night. Mark stumbled out of the driver's seat, reeking of stale beer, looking more annoyed than remorseful. Some idiot ran a red light, he slurred, waving a dismissive hand. Totally not my fault. Good thing you have good insurance, right, bro? Before I could form a single word, my parents' old sedan screeched up the driveway behind him. They must have been following him, ready to manage the fallout. They rushed right past me, their faces a mask of concern. Not for me, but for him. My mother clutched Mark's arm, anxiously checking him for scratches, while my dad put a protective hand on his shoulder. It's okay, son, you're safe, my dad said, his voice low and comforting. Then he turned his gaze on me, his eyes as hard and cold as river stones. He's family, Jake. He's your brother. It's just a truck. Let it go. Let it go. They stood there, coddling the son who had just destroyed my most prized possession while likely driving drunk, and they told me to let it go. I looked from their coddling faces to my mangled truck, and my gaze drifted past them, to my own front window. Through the glass, I could see a framed photo on the mantelpiece. It was the 4 of us taken years ago with my grandmother who passed a few years back. We were all smiling, a happy family frozen in time. On her deathbed, she'd made me promise I would always look out for my family, especially Mark. And standing there in the freezing night air, I realized with sickening clarity that my promise to her was the cage I had been living in for my entire adult life. That promise was the reason I was standing here, being treated like a disposable part of their lives. And for the first time, looking at that picture, I didn't feel the warmth of memory. I felt the cold iron bars of that cage closing around me. To truly understand how we got to that moment of utter betrayal in my driveway, you have to understand the fundamental operating system of the Wilson family. It was a system I had been programmed into since birth. My brother, Mark, who is 4 years younger than me, is the designated golden child. He's 28, handsome in a way that's almost careless, and armed with a charm he can switch on and off like a lamp. He has never, not once, been held truly accountable for a single bad decision in his entire life. And me? I'm Jake. I'm the reliable one, the responsible one, the boring older brother who just works hard, pays his bills on time, and doesn't cause any drama. For my parents, Mark was a full-time project to be managed, funded, and perpetually rescued. I was just a utility, a resource. This particular spiral into disaster really kicked into high gear about a month before the crash. It started, as things with Mark always did, with a phone call from my mother. I was on site, in the middle of a particularly stressful day. A new subcontractor had completely botched a foundation pour for a custom home we were building. It was a massive 5-figure mistake, and the entire project schedule was in jeopardy. The site supervisor was panicking, the homeowner was calling every hour, and my guys were standing around looking lost. I took a deep breath, pulled out the blueprints, and went to work. For 2 solid hours, I was in my element. I was on the phone with the structural engineer, walking my plumbing crew through a new routing plan, and negotiating with our concrete supplier for a priority rush order. I was calm, I was methodical, and I was in control. By lunchtime, I had a viable, cost-effective solution. My boss, Mike Thompson, a tough-as-nails guy who had been in the business for 40 years, came over to my trailer. He clapped me on the shoulder, a rare sign of approval. "This is why you're the best damn foreman we've got, Jake," he said, a gruff respect in his voice. "You don't get rattled. You just solve the problem." I wished he could see me in my other life, the one where I was constantly rattled. That very afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was laced with a manufactured urgency. "Jake, honey, it's an emergency." My heart immediately lurched. In my world, an emergency meant an accident on the job site, a critical failure of equipment. "What's wrong? Is everyone okay? Is it Dad?" "Oh, no, everyone's fine," she said quickly. "Well, not fine. It's Mark. His landlord, he's just a truly awful, heartless man. He kicked Mark out of his apartment." I took a deep breath, the smell of diesel and sawdust filling my trailer. "Okay, why did he kick him out?" "For being just a little behind on rent," she said, her tone dripping with indignation on Mark's behalf. I knew my mother's definition of a little. "Mom, how far behind was he?" She sighed, a long, dramatic sound designed to signal my lack of empathy. 3 months. "But it's hardly his fault, Jake. The job market is just terrible for young people. He's been trying so hard. He just needs a safe place to land on his feet for a little while. He can stay with you, right? Just for a few weeks. That's what family is for, to support each other. A few weeks. In my family's language, that meant indefinitely. I could feel the familiar weight of obligation settling on my shoulders. I thought of my quiet, clean house, my sanctuary from the noise of the world. I thought of my grandmother's promise. "Fine," I said, the single word feeling like a defeat. A few weeks. Mark showed up that night with 2 enormous suitcases and the entitled attitude of a guest checking into a 5-star resort. He unceremoniously dumped his belongings in the middle of my living room, the living room I had spent months renovating with my own 2 hands, and immediately collapsed onto the couch, grabbing the TV remote. "Hey, bro," he said, not even bothering to look up from his phone. "What's the Wi-Fi password? And you got any beer?" The next morning, before I left for work, I tried to establish some ground rules. I approached it like a toolbox talk on a job site, clear, direct, and professional. "Okay, Mark, listen up. There are 3 rules. Rule 1. You have exactly 1 month to find a job. A real job. I want to see proof that you're applying. I'll even help you with your resume. Rule 2. Clean up after yourself. I am not your maid. The sink is not a storage facility for dirty dishes. Rule 3, and this is the most important one, the one that is absolutely non-negotiable. You do not, under any circumstances, touch my truck. You have your own car. Use it. He gave me a lazy, mocking salute from the couch. Yeah, got it, boss. Loud and clear. Of course, he didn't get it. His job search consisted of him sleeping until noon, playing video games with his headset on, shouting at people I couldn't see, and endlessly scrolling through social media. My once clean and peaceful house began to feel like a grimy frat house. I'd come home from a 10-hour day to a sink overflowing with greasy dishes, the air thick with the smell of stale pizza and unwashed laundry. I was losing my mind, and the only person I could talk to about it was Sarah Chun, my sharpest and most trusted colleague. During a lunch break, sitting in the cab of my truck, I finally vented. I don't know what to do, I confessed, rubbing my tired eyes. It's like I'm living with a teenage tornado. Sarah took a bite of her sandwich and looked at me with an expression that was half sympathy, half exasperation. Jake, you're a doormat, she said, her honesty a splash of cold water. A welcome mat even, and your family is wiping their muddy boots all over you. It's complicated, Sarah. My mom just wants everyone to be happy, and my dad. Your mom is a master manipulator. She cut in, her voice firm but not unkind. She uses family like a weapon to keep you in line and to enable Mark's behavior. And your dad backs her up every time. You know I'm right. The real question is, when are you going to decide that your own peace of mind is worth more than their dysfunctional idea of approval? Her words stung precisely because they were the unvarnished truth. I just didn't have the tools to act on them yet. Then came the truck incident, and everything escalated. After filing the insurance claim and arranging for the rental, a tiny, featureless Honda Civic, I thought I could at least reclaim some control over my own transportation. I was wrong. The very next morning, I came out of my house, coffee in hand, ready to head to work, and the rental car was gone. Just an empty space in my driveway. I saw red. I called my parents' house, my voice dangerously quiet. My dad answered. "Oh, morning, Jake," he said, as if nothing was wrong. Mark had another one of those interviews this morning. A really promising one this time. We needed a reliable car to get him there looking sharp. It's all about first impressions, you know? So you just came to my house while I was sleeping and took my rental car? I asked, my voice trembling with a tightly controlled fury. The car that I'm paying for with my money because your son wrecked my truck? Don't you dare take that tone with me, Jacob, he snapped, his voice turning hard. We are a family. We share. What's yours is ours. We'll have the car back tonight. Stop being so dramatic. He hung up, just like that, so I walked to work. It was 2 miles in the freezing, sleeting rain. My work boots, designed for durability not for waterproofing, were soaked through in 10 minutes. My jeans were plastered to my legs, cold and heavy. I arrived on site looking like a drowned rat, my feet numb, my teeth chattering. And I did it again the next day, and the next. For 2 solid weeks, I walked to and from my physically demanding job while my own family, my brother, my mother, my father, used my rental car like their personal Uber service, burning my gas, for Mark's endless series of interviews that never, ever resulted in a job offer. My colleagues started to notice. Everything okay, boss? One of my guys asked. You look beat. I just nodded and said I was trying to get more exercise. The lie was humiliating. The inevitable happened. My body gave out. I got sick. It wasn't just a cold. It was a nasty, hacking cough that settled deep in my chest and a fever that left me dizzy, weak, and shivering. I had to call out of work, something I hadn't done in over 3 years. I felt utterly defeated. I dragged myself to a local urgent care clinic because I couldn't get the fever to break. A kind-faced nurse with a name tag that read Jessica Ramirez took my temperature and my blood pressure. She had warm, compassionate eyes that seemed to see right through the tough guy facade I tried to maintain. Wow, you look absolutely terrible, she said with gentle frankness. A fever of 102. You should be in bed. How did you get here today? I walked. I croaked out, my throat raw. Her eyebrows shot up in disbelief. You walked? In this weather with a fever like that? Why on earth didn't you drive? And for some reason, maybe it was the fever or the exhaustion, or the simple act of human kindness from a stranger, the dam inside me broke. The whole sorry story just came spilling out of me in a raspy, defeated whisper. The truck, my brother, my parents, the rental car, the walking. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was just too tired to keep it all inside anymore. She listened to the whole pathetic tale without interrupting, her expression shifting from professional concern to genuine shock and then to a quiet, simmering anger on my behalf. That is just awful, she said softly when I finished. That's not what family is supposed to do. That's abuse. She handed me a prescription for some strong antibiotics. You need to take care of yourself, Mr. Wilson, because it's painfully clear that no one else in your life is going to do it for you. Lying in bed that afternoon, the world swimming in a feverish haze, her words echoed in my head. You need to take care of yourself. It was such a simple concept, but for me it was a revelation. My entire life had been about taking care of them. My parents' delicate feelings, Mark's precarious future, the fragile image of our happy family. I had never once put myself first. As the fever raged, a different kind of heat was building inside me. It was the slow, burning fire of a lifetime of resentment finally catching light. The foundation of my role in the family, the role of the reliable, silent shock absorber, was cracking. And I knew, with a certainty that cut through the fever, that something was about to shatter. The man who walked to work in the snow for 2 weeks was not going to be the same man who answered the phone when the insurance adjuster finally made that fateful call. The call came 2.5 weeks after the crash. 2.5 weeks of trudging to work in the miserable Portland winter, of my body aching with a sickness born from stress and cold, of listening to my family offer cheerful, oblivious updates about how they'd used my rental car to run errands. I was back at work, trying to feel normal again, sitting in my small foreman's trailer and staring at a set of blueprints that my mind refused to process. My phone buzzed. It was an unknown number with a local area code. Is this Jake Wilson? A man's crisp, professional voice asked. This is he, I answered, my own voice still a bit hoarse. Mr. Wilson, my name is David Miller. I'm the senior claims adjuster with Pacific Shield Insurance. I'm assigned to your claim regarding the Ford F-150, VIN ending in 7492. I sat up a little straighter, my coffee forgotten. This was it, right? I've been waiting for your call. Any news on the assessment? We've completed the assessment, yes. The vehicle is a total loss, as I'm sure you expected. But that's not the primary reason for my call, Mr. Wilson. I've received the official police report from the incident, and there's a significant discrepancy I need to clarify with you before we can proceed. A cold feeling, entirely different from the fever, began to creep up my spine. A discrepancy? What kind of discrepancy? Well, David said, and I could hear the faint rustle of papers on his end, a sound that suddenly seemed ominous. In your initial statement to our agent, you indicated that you had lent the vehicle to your brother, Mark Wilson. Is that accurate? I hesitated. The lie my parents had coached me on, the one designed to make everything simpler, sat heavy on my tongue. Just tell them you let him borrow it, Jake. It's a family matter. Don't cause a fuss and get the police involved in our business. Their words echoed in my ears. Yes, I said, and the lie tasted like ash. I let him borrow it. There was a long, pointed silence on the other end of the line. It stretched for 5, maybe 10 seconds. It was a silence that told me he knew I was lying. Okay, David said, his voice now carefully neutral. Because, Mr. Wilson, that is a direct contradiction to what your brother told the responding officer at the scene of the accident. The air in my trailer suddenly felt thin and hard to breathe. What did my brother say? According to the official report filed by Officer Ryan Martinez of the Portland Police Bureau, David said, his voice clear and measured as if he were reading a legal document, Mr. Mark Wilson stated, and I am quoting directly from the officer's notes here, I took the truck without my brother's permission. I know I messed up. I was just gonna ask him later. It was just a family misunderstanding. My grip on my phone tightened so hard I felt the plastic creak. He admitted it. He stood there on the side of the road, smelling of booze and failure, and told a uniformed police officer that he had, in no uncertain terms, stolen my truck. And my parents were there. They heard him say it. They stood right there and heard him confess to a crime, and they still had the gall to walk over to me, look me straight in the eye and tell me to let it go. "Mr. Wilson, are you still on the line?" "Yes," I managed to rasp, my throat feeling like it was closing up. "Yes, I'm here. I have to be upfront with you, sir," David continued, his professional tone unwavering. "The report also notes that your brother expressed hope that you would not press charges. From an insurance standpoint, this changes everything. This is no longer a standard collision claim between two parties. This is a claim involving the unauthorized use of a vehicle, which is a legal term for theft. It moves this out of a simple claims issue and into the realm of a potential criminal act." Criminal act. The words hung in the air, electric and terrifying, and, in a strange, clarifying way, incredibly liberating. All the gaslighting, all the manipulation, all the times they made me feel like I was the crazy one for being upset. It was all stripped away. The law had a word for what happened. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime. "Mr. Miller," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Can you please email me a copy of that full police report?" "I can do that. It's standard procedure in a case with conflicting statements. I've just sent it to the email address you have on file. Take a look at it, Mr. Wilson. The ball is in your court now regarding how you want us to classify this event. It will affect the outcome of your claim and your premiums." I hung up without another word and stared at my phone. A second later, the notification pinged. New email from David Miller. Subject: Your claim #PC994-21. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely tap the screen to open it. I downloaded the attached PDF. And there it was, in the cold, impersonal black and white of an official document. Driver Mark J. Wilson. DOB. May 12, 1996. Statement. Subject admits to operating vehicle without owner's consent. Claims it was a family misunderstanding. Witnesses on scene: Robert Wilson, father; Martha Wilson, mother. Statement. Witnesses state they were unaware of subject's use of the vehicle prior to the incident. That last line hit me with the force of a physical blow. They hadn't just lied to me. They had lied to the police. They had stood there and constructed a deliberate, calculated falsehood to protect their golden boy, a narrative that painted me as a willing participant in my own violation. A wave of hot, acrid nausea washed over me. I leaned back in my chair, the flimsy trailer wall creaking in protest. For 32 years, I had operated on the bedrock belief that my family, deep down, loved me. That their blatant favoritism towards Mark was a character flaw, a blind spot, not a malicious, conscious choice. That single document, that PDF on my phone screen, took a sledgehammer to that bedrock belief and shattered it into a million pieces. This wasn't a blind spot. This was a conspiracy. This was an alliance. And I was on the outside of it. The simmering anger I'd been suppressing for weeks, for my entire life, didn't come out as a shout. It didn't erupt, coalesced. It compressed into something cold, hard, and razor-sharp. It was the same methodical, problem-solving focus I used to salvage a disastrous foundation pour. The problem was no longer a few tons of bad concrete. The problem was my family, and it needed a solution. I stood up, walked to the door of my trailer, and looked out at my crew. They were good, hard-working men. They respected me. They trusted me to be fair, honest, and decisive. And here I was, letting my own family treat me like a worthless inconvenience. My phone rang again. The caller ID read, "Mom." I answered, my voice devoid of any emotion. "Hello. Jake, honey, are you on your way home soon?" she asked, her voice bright and utterly oblivious. "Mark has another one of those interviews tomorrow morning. A really, really big one. It's for a promotion he's practically guaranteed to get, and we need to get the rental car detailed tonight so he makes a good impression. Appearance is everything, you know? A promotion? For a job he didn't even have? The casual, breathtaking, layered audacity of the lie was almost impressive. It was the final straw. It was the universe giving me a sign. The last thread of my lifelong patience didn't just snap. It vaporized. No, I said. The cheerful chatter on her end stopped abruptly. No? What do you mean, no? I mean, no, you cannot have the car. Not tonight. Not ever again. I need it. But Jake, this is for your brother's future. This could be his big break. Don't be so selfish. Selfish. The word came out as a low, dangerous growl. You want to talk to me about being selfish? Here's what's going to happen. I want the keys to my rental car on my kitchen counter by the time I get home tonight. If they are not there, I will call the police and report the car stolen. Do you understand me? Jacob Allen Wilson, how dare you? She shrieked, her voice rising in pitch and indignation. After everything we've done for you, we are your family. You stopped being my family the moment you stood next to a police officer, listened to my brother admit to a crime, and then lied to everyone's face to cover it up? I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. And for the first time in my 32 years of life, I hung up on my mother. I walked back to my desk, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But my mind was a sea of crystal clear water. I opened my laptop, pushing aside the construction plans and budget sheets. I created a new folder on the desktop. I named it F-150 Incident. With a steady hand, I saved the police report into it. It was the first piece of evidence. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it wouldn't be the last. The storm hadn't just begun. I was the storm. The next few days were defined by a tense, ringing silence. Just as I had demanded, the keys to the battered little Honda were on my kitchen counter when I got home from work. There were no angry follow-up calls, no barrage of guilt-tripping text messages. It was a strategic retreat on their part, a silence filled with unspoken threats and the heavy expectation that I would, as always, be the one to break it. They were waiting for me to feel guilty, to get lonely, to crawl back and apologize for my outburst. They were waiting for the old Jake. They had no idea he was gone. The man who now lived in my house used his anger not as a destructive force, but as fuel. My evenings, once spent in a numb haze in front of the television, were now dedicated to a new project. My foreman's brain, the one that could look at a chaotic job site and see a clear path forward, was now focused on a different kind of construction. I was building a case. I spent hours online, my kitchen table littered with printed-out legal statutes from the Oregon State website. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, filing a false police report, aiding and abetting. The words were no longer abstract legal terms. They were the new blueprints for my life. After a week of this, I knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed a professional, an architect for this new structure I was building. A friend of a friend, another contractor, gave me a name. She's a shark, Jake, he'd said. Expensive, but worth every penny. Her name was Stephanie Rodriguez. Her office was in a sleek, glass and steel building downtown, a world away from the mud, sawdust, and grit of my daily life. I felt out of place in my clean work jeans and flannel shirt, but I walked in with my head held high. Stephanie was in her late 30s, with piercing dark eyes and an air of coiled energy. She didn't waste time with small talk. After a brisk handshake, she gestured to the chair opposite her polished mahogany desk. My friend said you had a family issue. Tell me everything. I laid out the entire story, from Mark moving in to the discovery of the wrecked truck to the revelatory phone call with David Miller. I finished by sliding the printed police report across the desk to her. She read it in silence, her expression giving nothing away. When she finished, she leaned back in her leather chair, tapping a pen against her chin. Okay, she said, her voice crisp. On paper, you have a clear case for unauthorized use. But you need to understand something very clearly, Jake. Family cases are the absolute messiest corner of the law. a judge, a jury. They're predisposed to see a family misunderstanding, just like your brother so conveniently called it. Your parents will get on the stand and they will cry. They will talk about how much they love both their sons, how you were always the difficult one, how Mark has had a troubled life. They will paint you as a cold, vindictive man who is trying to destroy his own family over a piece of metal. A sliver of the old frustration, the old helplessness tried to creep back in. So what's the point? What do I do? Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw the shark my friend had described. The point is that we don't play their game. We don't rely on, she said. We make their feelings, their tears, and their testimony completely irrelevant. We build a case so solid, so fortified with irrefutable factual proof, that a judge has no choice but to rule on the evidence. Your brother's one-time mistake needs to become a clear pattern of calculated exploitation. Your parents' blind love needs to become conscious, willing conspiracy. My advice to you? Go home. Be quiet. Say nothing. And watch them. People like this who have gotten away with everything their whole lives, they get arrogant. They think they're untouchable. And when people get arrogant, they get sloppy. Her words were a battle plan, a blueprint. I left her office feeling not angry, but empowered. I had a mission. That night, on my way home, I stopped at an electronics store. The feeling of being a spy in my own home was unsettling, but Stephanie's voice echoed in my head. Irrefutable proof. I bought 2 of the smallest nanny cams they had, the kind that look like innocuous black USB chargers. That evening, with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, I installed them. One was plugged into an outlet in the living room, with a clear view of the couch where Mark spent most of his days. The second one went in the garage, plugged into a power strip on my workbench, aimed directly at my large, red snap-on tool chest. I was right about the arrogance. The silence from my family broke a few days later. I came home from work, and I could hear my mother in my kitchen, talking on speakerphone. I froze in the hallway, just out of sight, my heart pounding. It was Mark on the other end. No, I'm telling you, he's just being dramatic. My mother was saying, her voice a poisonous mixture of disdain and reassurance. He's trying to punish you because he's jealous. That's all it's ever been. He'll get over it. He always does. But what if he doesn't? Mark whined, his voice full of self-pity. What if he talks to that insurance guy again? What if he really does press charges like that cop said he could? He won't, my mother said with the absolute, unshakable certainty of a person who has controlled someone their entire life. Jake doesn't have the guts. He would never risk tearing this family apart over a stupid truck and a little bit of money. Just lay low. Your father and I are handling things. Handling things. The phrase sent a genuine chill down my spine. What exactly were they handling? I got my answer 2 days later. It was a Saturday. I was planning to do some work on my own car, a simple oil change and tune-up. I went to my big snap-on tool chest in the garage. It was more than just a toolbox. It was my masterpiece, a collection I'd built up over 10 years of hard work, a symbol of my career and my skill, worth over $8,500. I pulled open the top drawer to get a specific torque wrench. The custom-fit foam insert was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. I yanked open the next drawer. A whole tray of deep-well impact sockets gone. I tore through the chest, my movements becoming frantic. Drawer after drawer revealed gaping holes, empty spaces where gleaming, expensive chrome tools used to be. My brand-new, half-inch impact driver, my set of ratcheting wrenches, my diagnostic scanner vanished. A cold dread, heavier and sicker than anything I had felt before, settled in my stomach. Mark. It had to be Mark. But how could I prove it? He would just deny it. My parents would back him up, say I'd lost them or lent them to someone. It would be my word against theirs all over again. Stephanie's words cut through the panic. Pattern of behavior. Calculated exploitation. They get sloppy. My mind started racing, the foreman's analytical brain kicking into high gear. Where would a lazy, desperate idiot like Mark try to sell high-end, specialized tools for quick cash? Not a pawn shop. They'd ask for ID and be suspicious of brand new, expensive gear. He'd use the internet, anonymously. That night, after waiting until the house was completely dark and silent, I sat at my kitchen table, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating my face. I opened up Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay. I started searching. Snap-on tools, mechanic tools. I set the location filter to a 50-mile radius around Portland. I scrolled for what felt like hours, my eyes burning from the screen. Page after page of rusty old wrenches, mismatched socket sets, greasy tools from guys retiring or clearing out their garages. Nothing. Doubt began to poison my resolve. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just becoming paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there were none. I was about to give up, to close the laptop in defeat, when I decided to try one last, desperate search. A broader term. Pro Tools. I scrolled. And then I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat. My heart felt like it had ceased to beat. The picture was grainy, obviously taken with a cheap cell phone camera. But there was no mistaking them. It was my impact driver, my socket set, my ratcheting wrenches. They were all laid out on a dirty towel on a concrete floor. The listing was titled, Pro Tools for Sale, Big Discount, Need Cash Fast. And then I saw the background. My blood ran ice cold. It was the pegboard wall of my own garage. I could see the distinct, fan-shaped pattern of oil stains next to the door where a can had leaked years ago. I could see the small, hairline crack in the concrete floor right beneath my workbench. He hadn't even bothered to take them somewhere else to photograph them. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it. The sloppiness. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on the seller's profile. It was a fake name, of course. PDX Flipper 503. The profile was brand new, created just 3 days prior. I took a screenshot of the ad, a screenshot of the profile, a screenshot of every single photo. With a click that felt as loud as a gunshot in the silent house, I saved them all to the folder. F-150 incident. It was no longer just about the truck. This was war, and I had just found my enemy's battle plans. The discovery of that online ad was like a flash of lightning illuminating a dark and treacherous landscape. I could see everything clearly now. This wasn't just about a totaled truck or a few missing tools. This was a deep, systemic pattern of abuse and exploitation, and I finally had the map to prove it. But I knew I had to be cold, calculating, and methodical. A screenshot was good, but it wasn't a knockout blow. They could delete the ad, claim the profile wasn't theirs, deny everything. I needed to connect the dots so tightly that there was no room for lies, no space for their manipulative tears. The first thing I did, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and grim determination, was to pull the footage from the nanny cam I had hidden in the garage. I queued it up on my laptop, my hands moving with a mechanical calm that felt completely detached from the hurricane of emotions inside me. I scrolled back 3 days, to the morning after I had last seen the tools. And there it was. The video was grainy, shot in the dim light of the garage, but the image was sickeningly, undeniably clear. It showed my brother, Mark, systematically opening the drawers of my tool chest and stuffing my expensive tools into a large, black duffel bag. But he wasn't alone. Standing right next to him, holding the duffel bag open, was my father. At one point, my dad pointed to a specific wrench set, said something to Mark, and then helped him lift it out. And there, standing in the doorway from the kitchen, arms crossed, watching the entire operation like a supervisor on a job site, was my mother. I saw her nod in approval. My stomach turned over with such violence I thought I was going to be sick. This wasn't Mark acting alone in a moment of desperation. This wasn't my parents being willfully blind to their son's flaws. This was a coordinated 3-person criminal conspiracy. They were accomplices. They had actively, consciously participated in a felony theft against their own son and brother. I felt a profound, soul-deep coldness spread through me. The love I had once felt for them, the sense of duty, it was all being flash-frozen, turning brittle and fragile. I downloaded the video file. With a click, Exhibit C was saved. The next day, I took a calculated risk. I waited until my parents had gone out for what my mother cheerfully called their power walk, and I went to the old family computer in the spare room. It was a dinosaur, slow and clunky, the one they used for paying bills and sending emails. I felt a surge of guilt, the ingrained feeling of a child breaking a rule, but I pushed it down. This was a battlefield now, and I needed intelligence. I logged in. Their password, laughably, was still Family1. I opened the web browser and clicked on the history. My heart hammered against my ribs. There it was, a series of searches from 4 days ago, the day before the tools were listed for sale. Search. How much are used Snap-on tools worth? Search. Pawn shops that don't require ID. Portland, Oregon. Search. Best way to sell tools for cash fast. Search. Facebook Marketplace anonymous selling. They had researched it. They had planned it. This was premeditated. Then I opened my mother's email client. This felt like the ultimate violation, but I had to know. And there, near the top of her inbox, was an email from her bank. The subject line was, "Notification of funds transfer." I clicked it open. It was a confirmation of a $2,000 e-transfer. Sent to Mark Wilson. Dated 2 days ago, the day after the ad was posted. The memo line my mother had typed in read, "For the new apartment deposit. Love you." I felt the air leave my lungs. They weren't just handling things. They were laundering the money from my stolen property to fund his escape. They were using the proceeds from robbing me to set him up in a new life, a life free of consequences. I documented everything. I took pictures of the computer screen with my phone, the browser history, the email. I saved them to my laptop. The evidence folder was becoming dense, heavy with the weight of their treachery. Later that afternoon, I put the next phase of my plan into motion. I took a walk around the block and timed it so I would casually run into my elderly next-door neighbor, Linda Baker, who was meticulously tending to her rose bushes. She was a sweet, sharp-as-a-tack widow who had known me since I was a kid. After a few minutes of small talk about the weather and her award-winning roses, I steered the conversation. "Yeah, things have been a bit chaotic at the house," I said with a practiced sigh. "Mark's finally moving out, getting his own place. I think my parents were over helping him move some of his stuff the other day." Linda frowned, leaning on her trowel. "Oh, I saw them. It was the strangest thing. It was on Wednesday morning. I know you're always at work on Wednesdays, but your dad's old pickup was backed right up to your garage door. He and Mark were carrying out some heavy-looking cases and bags. I remember thinking it was odd they'd be doing it when you weren't home to supervise." My heart gave a leap. A witness. An impartial, credible, third-party witness. "Really? Wednesday morning?" I asked, feigning surprise. Would you be willing to just write that down for me, Linda? Just what you saw and when. Things with Mark are complicated, and it would really help me to have a clear record of things." She looked at me, her shrewd eyes seeming to understand more than I was saying. She was a no-nonsense woman who didn't tolerate fools or liars. "Of course, dear," she said, patting my arm. "You've been a good neighbor for 20 years. Let me go get a pen." An hour later, I had a signed, dated witness statement in my hand. Exhibit D. My case was now complete. It was airtight. I had the official police report of the initial crime. I had the online ad for my stolen property. I had high-resolution video of the theft in progress, starring my entire immediate family. I had their own digital footprints from their computer. I had the financial records of them transferring the money. And I had a signed statement from an independent witness. The next morning, I took a personal day off from work. I didn't call Stephanie. A civil suit for damages would take months, maybe years. It would be a slow, draining battle of lawyers and legal fees. This was simpler. This was cleaner. This was a crime. I put all of my evidence onto a fresh USB drive. I printed out every document, every screenshot, every statement, and I organized it all into a thick, professional-looking binder with tab dividers. I drove to the downtown police precinct. I walked up to the front desk and asked for Officer Ryan Martinez. When he came out to the lobby, he had the weary, cautious look of a man who was about to wade into another messy family dispute. "Look, Mr. Wilson," he started. keeping his voice low. "I appreciate you coming in, but as I said, these things are usually best handled outside the legal system." I didn't say a word. I just placed the thick binder on the high counter between us and opened it to the first page. It was a crystal-clear, high-quality printout of the Facebook Marketplace ad. I slowly turned the page to reveal a series of still frames captured from the nanny cam video, showing the faces of my brother, my father, and my mother in my garage. Then I turned the page again to the bank transfer confirmation. Then to the signed witness statement from Linda Baker. His condescending, weary expression began to melt away. He fell silent. He picked up the first page and studied it intently. He looked at the second and his eyebrows shot up. He spent the next 10 minutes meticulously reviewing the contents of the binder, his professionalism and focus increasing with every page he turned. I pushed the USB drive across the counter. "The full, unedited video of the theft is on there, officer, along with digital copies of all the documents in this binder." He plugged the USB into his computer terminal. He put on a pair of headphones and watched the video, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. When he was finished, he took off the headphones and looked at me. And for the first time, he wasn't looking at me like a disgruntled family member causing a scene. He was looking at me with a newfound, professional respect. "Mr. Wilson," he said, his voice now serious and firm. This is one of the most thorough and well-documented civilian-compiled cases I have ever seen in my 15 years on the force. You've done our job for us." He shook his head slowly. "This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is a textbook case of felony theft and conspiracy to sell stolen goods." He picked up his phone and made some calls. I heard him use phrases like irrefutable video evidence and multiple co-conspirators. He spoke to someone in the district attorney's office. An hour later, he came back to me, a grimly determined look on his face. "They've reviewed the preliminary evidence," he said. "They're fast-tracking it. They are issuing a warrant for the arrest of Mark Joseph Wilson." The climax of my story wasn't going to be a shouting match in my living room. It wasn't going to be a dramatic confrontation I had to stage myself. The system, the legal system that I had trusted and presented with cold, hard, undeniable facts, was now in motion. That evening, I was sitting in my living room, the house eerily quiet, when I saw the flashing blue and red lights wash silently across my walls. A police cruiser pulled quietly into my driveway. I stood up and opened the front door just as Officer Martinez and his partner were walking up the path. My parents and Mark were in the kitchen, their laughter audible as they watched some sitcom on a small TV. They saw the uniforms through the doorway and froze. My mother's hand flew to her mouth in a theatrical gasp. My father's jovial face went slack and pale. Mark just looked confused, a half-eaten sandwich in his hand. "Mark Wilson," Officer Martinez said, his voice professional and booming in the sudden silence of the house. "Why yeah," Mark stammered, his eyes darting from the cops to me and back again. "You are under arrest for grand larceny and conspiracy to traffic stolen property." "What?" my mother shrieked, rushing forward. "This is a ridiculous mistake. It's a misunderstanding. Jake, for God's sake, tell them this is crazy." I just stood there in the doorway, my arms crossed over my chest, and met her hysterical, pleading gaze with a calm I didn't know I was capable of. I didn't have to say a single word. My binder, my evidence, my methodical work, it was all speaking for me now. As Officer Martinez's partner put my brother's hands behind his back and the cold, metallic sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the house, Mark's arrogant smirk finally, completely crumbled. It was replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated, childlike panic. He looked directly at me, his eyes wide with disbelief and betrayal. "Jake, you did this? You called the cops on your own family? On your brother?" I finally spoke, my voice low and steady, for him and for my parents to hear, the words tasting like liberation. "No, Mark," I said. "You did this to yourselves. Watching my brother, the permanent golden child, get led out of my house in handcuffs was one of the most surreal and out-of-body experiences of my entire life. The rhythmic sweep of the flashing police lights across the walls, the sharp, authoritative squawk of the police radio from the driveway, the final, definitive click of the cruiser door shutting. It all felt like a scene from a television show, not my actual life. But the profound, heavy silence that fell over the house after the car pulled away was devastatingly, suffocatingly real. My parents stood frozen in the middle of my living room, looking like statues that had been violently cracked. The years of arrogance, of self-righteous authority, had been shattered in an instant, leaving behind only hollow shock. My mother was sobbing, not loud, hysterical sobs, but the quiet, gulping, hopeless sobs of someone whose entire world has just collapsed. Her face was buried in her hands. My father just stared at the front door, his face a slack, gray mask of disbelief. "How could you?" he finally whispered, his voice so thin it was barely audible. He turned to me, and the anger I had expected wasn't there. There was only a brittle, wounded confusion. "He's your brother, Jake." The accusation, once so powerful, had lost all its venom. "And you're my parents?" I shot back, the cold calm still encasing me like a suit of armor. Parents are supposed to protect their children, all of their children, not help one of them systematically rob the other. "We were just trying to help him," my mother cried out, her voice muffled by her hands. She looked up at me, her face a mess of streaked makeup and genuine despair. "He was in so much trouble. He needed the money. We didn't know what else to do." "So you stole from me?" I asked, my voice dangerously level. "You helped him steal thousands of dollars worth of tools that I worked for 10 years to buy? Tools I need for my livelihood? That was your brilliant solution." This was it. The final, great confrontation I had both dreaded and craved. But there was no triumph in it, no sweet satisfaction. Seeing them completely stripped of their power, all their manipulative anger and guilt-tripping tactics rendered useless, just left them looking small, old, and pathetic. "You just don't understand the pressure we were under," my father mumbled, slumping heavily onto the couch as if his legs could no longer support him. He couldn't even look at me. His confession was directed at the floral pattern on the armchair. We had some financial trouble ourselves. Some bad investments I made went south. We remortgaged the house. Mark, he was also deep in debt from credit cards and some other things. So that was it. The great, hidden, dramatic motive. It wasn't just about their pathological need to coddle their favorite son. It was about their own failures, their own incompetence. They were in a deep financial hole, and instead of facing it like responsible adults, they looked at me and saw a solution. They saw a walking, talking emergency fund. My success, my hard work, my financial stability, it wasn't a source of pride for them. It was a resource to be plundered. "You thought I could afford it," I stated. It wasn't a question. It was a final, damning realization. "You looked at my life, my stable job, my house that I maintain, my truck that was paid off, and you decided that I had enough to spare, so you just took it. It was easier than facing your own problems. We were going to pay you back, honey, we swear," my mother insisted, her voice lacking any real conviction. "As soon as we got back on our feet." "No, you weren't," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You were going to let Mark move into his new apartment with the money from my stolen tools, and you were going to hope I never found out. And if I did, you would have gaslit me, called me selfish, and told me to let it go, just like you always do. You would have kept lying, just like you lied about the truck, just like you lied to the police, just like you've been lying to me and to yourselves for my entire life." I walked over to the desk in the corner of the room, where I had left a thick manila envelope. I picked it up and tossed it onto the coffee table in front of them. It landed with a heavy, final thud. "This is for you," I said. "It's a complete, printed copy of everything I gave to the police. The video stills, the bank statements, the browser history from your computer, Linda's witness testimony. I want you to look at it. I want you to see, in black and white, just how thoroughly and methodically you betrayed me. And I want you to know that this document, this record of your actions, is the last thing you will ever get from me." My mother reached for the envelope with a trembling hand, then recoiled as if the paper itself were burning hot. "I want you both out of my house," I said, the words tasting like rust and freedom. "Pack a bag and be gone by morning." "Jake, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "We have nowhere to go." "Where will we go?" I looked at my mother, at the woman who had raised me, and I felt a vast, empty space where my sense of obligation used to be. "I don't know, Mom," I said, and the finality in my own voice was as surprising to me as it was to them. And for the first time in my 32 years, I realized with absolute certainty that it is not my problem to solve. The legal process that followed was, for me, blessedly anticlimactic. Faced with the mountain of undeniable evidence I had compiled, Mark's court-appointed lawyer immediately advised him to take a plea bargain. He pleaded guilty to a lesser felony charge of theft. There was no dramatic trial, no airing of our family's dirty laundry in a courtroom. The sentence was 18 months of strict probation, court-mandated counseling for compulsive behavior, and full financial restitution to me for the value of the tools, $8,500, and for all damages and costs associated with my truck. He would carry a felony on his permanent record for the rest of his life. My parents did what they always did when faced with a problem they couldn't manipulate or bully their way out of. They ran away. They didn't even say goodbye. One Saturday when I was out for the day with Sarah, they came with a U-Haul trailer, packed up their lives from the house they could no longer afford, and moved to Seattle to go live with my mom's sister. They left their house key on the kitchen counter of my house, a silent, final admission of their complete and utter defeat. The house was quiet. For the first few weeks, the silence was a tangible thing, a heavy blanket that smothered all other sounds. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, sounded like a footstep that wasn't there. But slowly, gradually, a new kind of silence began to take its place. It wasn't the silence of absence or loss. It was the silence of peace. It was the clean, quiet, beautiful sound of my life finally, truly being my own. The 8 months that followed were like the first spring thaw after a long, brutal winter. The world looked different, smelled different, felt different. With the constant, draining background noise of my family's manufactured dramas and simmering resentments gone for good, I could finally hear my own thoughts. I could focus on my own life, not as a reaction to them, but as a proactive creation of my own. The first restitution check from Mark arrived in the mail. It was a paltry sum, barely enough to cover a tank of gas, but holding it in my hand felt like a monumental victory. It was a tangible acknowledgement of the wrong that had been done. The insurance company, now dealing with a clear, undisputed case of unauthorized use and theft, finally processed my claim correctly and paid out the full market value of my totaled F-150 without any further argument. I took that check, added a significant amount from my own savings, money that was no longer being siphoned off to fund my family's crises, and I did something purely for myself. I walked into a Ford dealership, not as a hesitant young man looking for a used bargain, but as a confident man who knew exactly what he wanted. I bought a 2018 Ford F-150, newer and more powerful than my old one, in a deep, metallic cobalt blue that looked like the midnight sky. The first time I drove it off the lot, the windows down, the smell of the new interior filling the cab, I felt a sense of ownership that went far beyond a title or a registration. This truck was mine, earned by me, chosen by me, and unencumbered by anyone else's drama. I also used the restitution money, as it slowly trickled in, to replace every single stolen tool. I went online and ordered them one by one, laying the new, gleaming chrome pieces into the empty, custom-fit foam slots in my tool chest was a deeply therapeutic and satisfying act. It was like restoring pieces of myself that had been carelessly carved out and thrown away. But the biggest and most profound change in my life wasn't the new truck or the replaced tools. It was Sarah. Throughout the entire ugly ordeal, from the initial shock to the final arrest, she had been my unwavering rock. She didn't offer me easy, useless platitudes like, "Everything happens for a reason." She listened. She got angry on my behalf, her fury a righteous, validating fire. She was the one who sat with me in my silent house the night my parents left, not saying much, just being a quiet, solid, reassuring presence in the deafening emptiness. Our friendship, which had been forged in the fires of my family's spectacular implosion, slowly and naturally began to blossom into something more profound. We started spending our weekends together, not just as colleagues blowing off steam, but as partners. We tackled projects around my house, the house that was now entirely peacefully mine. We repainted the living room in a warm, welcoming gray, exorcising the ghost of Mark's lazy, entitled presence. We built a new cedar deck in the backyard, creating a space for quiet mornings with coffee and long summer evenings with friends. Working alongside her, seeing the easy competence in her hands as she measured a board, the genuine, unforced smile on her face as we admired our work, I finally understood what a real partnership was supposed to feel like. It wasn't about one person constantly rescuing the other. It wasn't about dependency or manipulation or keeping score. It was about two whole, competent people choosing to build something together side by side. One sunny Saturday afternoon, about 8 months after Mark's arrest, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but my stomach clenched as I read the first line. I knew instantly who it was from. "Jake, it's Mom. I know it's been a long while. I hope you're doing well. Your father and I miss you terribly every day. I wanted you to know that Mark is doing so much better. The court-mandated counseling has really changed him. He talks about what he did, about the deep shame he feels. He's working hard. He's a different person now, Jake. I know we have so much to repair, but I pray every night that one day we can be a family again." I stared at the text, a complicated knot of old, familiar feelings tightening in my chest. Had he really changed? Was it possible for someone like him to fundamentally alter their character? A tiny, treacherous part of me, the part that still remembered that smiling little boy in the family photograph, wanted to believe it. It was the part of me that still yearned for the family I deserved, not the one I got. That same day, Sarah and I went out to grab coffee at a local place we liked. As we were standing in line, I heard a woman's hesitant voice say my name. "Excuse me, Jake? Jake Wilson." I turned around. It took me a second to place her out of context, without her nurse's scrubs. It was Jessica Ramirez, the kind-faced nurse from the urgent care clinic, the woman who had shown me a moment of pure, unadulterated human kindness on one of the worst days of my life. "Jessica, hey?" I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. It was amazing to see her. "It's great to see you. How have you been?" I'm okay," she said, but her eyes were troubled, and she kept glancing nervously at Sarah before looking back at me. "Listen, this is going to sound like a really strange and random question, but I have to ask. I remember when you came into the clinic, you told me your brother's name was Mark, right?" The hopeful knot in my chest instantly turned to a cold, hard stone of dread. "Yeah, that's his name." "Why?" She took a deep breath, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "My younger sister. She has a huge, generous heart and sometimes not the best judgment when it comes to men. She met this guy a few months ago. He was charming, handsome, and told her this whole sob story about being down on his luck and trying to get his life back together after some family trouble. His name was Mark." My blood ran cold. I felt Sarah tense up beside me, sensing where this was going. "Jessica," I started, but she kept talking. "She let him move in with her," Jessica continued, her voice trembling with a quiet, protective anger, "just for a few weeks while he got on his feet. Last week, my sister came home from work to find him gone. He took her laptop, her iPad, and all of the jewelry our grandmother left her in her will, an inheritance she cherished. He just vanished. We filed a police report, of course, and when they ran his name and date of birth, they found he had a prior conviction for felony theft against his own brother." She looked at me, her eyes pleading for confirmation, though she already knew the answer. "Oh my God," she whispered, her face crumbling. "It's him. It's your brother." Wordlessly, I pulled out my phone. I opened the text from my mother that I had received not 2 hours earlier. I held it out for her to see. Her eyes scanned the words on the screen. "He's a different person now, Jake. Jessica's eyes filled with tears of pure, unadulterated rage and frustration. "He's not different," she said, her voice shaking. "He's a predator. And your mother is still out there, lying for him, enabling him to do this to other people." In that single, devastating moment, any last, lingering flicker of hope I had harbored for my family's redemption was extinguished for good. The text wasn't an olive branch. It was a weapon. It was another manipulation, another lie designed to placate me and keep the family myth alive while the golden child continued on his path of destruction, leaving a wake of trusting, kind-hearted victims. But this time I wasn't the helpless victim. I was a survivor, and I knew exactly what to do. "Jessica," I said, my voice firm and clear, meeting her eyes with a newfound strength. "He is not going to get away with this. Not this time. You're not alone in this fight. I have the name and number of a very, very good lawyer." I gave Jessica the direct line for Stephanie Rodriguez. I didn't just pass on a number. I went with her and her sister to the initial consultation. I sat with them in that same polished office and helped them lay out their story. I told them what kind of evidence to look for: bank statements, text messages, statements from friends who had met Mark. I used the painful, hard-won lessons from my own battle to arm someone else for theirs. It was a strange, empowering feeling. I was helping them build a case against my own brother, and I felt no conflict, no guilt. Only a grim, resolute sense of justice. With an existing felony conviction and a clear probation violation, there were no more deals for Mark. The legal system, which often moves at a glacial pace, acted swiftly. He was apprehended a month later in another state, already working his charm on another potential victim. This time, there was no slap on the wrist. He was sentenced to 3 years in a state penitentiary. A few months after his sentencing, a letter arrived at my house. It was a thin, flimsy envelope with a prison postmark from another state. It was from Mark. I stood in my hallway, holding it in my hand, feeling the surprising lack of weight to it. I thought it would feel heavier. All the years of anger, of resentment, of feeling second best, of betrayal, I thought they would be contained in that thin paper envelope. A year ago, I would have torn it open with trembling hands, desperate to read the words inside, desperately searching for a real apology, for a glimmer of recognition for the pain he had caused, for some kind of closure that only he could give me. But standing there, in the quiet of my own peaceful home, I realized I didn't need it anymore. My closure wasn't hiding in the ink of his self-pitying words. My closure was all around me. It was in the solid, peaceful silence of my house. It was in Sarah's easy laughter as we cooked dinner together in the kitchen we had painted ourselves. It was in the solid, reliable feel of the steering wheel of my new truck, a truck that was mine in a way the old one never could be. My closure was in the hard-earned knowledge that I had faced the deepest betrayal imaginable from the people who were supposed to love me most, and I had not only survived it, but I had built a better, stronger, more authentic life on the foundations of the old one's ruins. I walked over to the kitchen counter and placed the unopened letter next to the recycling bin. Maybe one day, years from now, I'd read it out of some detached curiosity. Maybe I wouldn't. It no longer mattered. His voice, his excuses, his manipulations, they no longer had any power here. I went out onto the back deck we had built together, the scent of cedar and damp earth in the air. Sarah was there, tending to the small herb garden we had planted in pots. She looked up at me as I approached and smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes and made my heart feel full. And in her eyes, I saw my future. It was a future built not on obligation or a broken promise made to the past, but on mutual respect, on shared joy, on the simple, powerful truth that family isn't always about the blood you share. Sometimes, family is the one you choose, the one you build. It's the one that builds you back up when you've been torn down. And my life, a life I had fought for and reclaimed piece by painful piece, was just beginning. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. I really hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a really tough choice to protect your own peace and your own future? Share your story in the comments below. I promise you I read them all. And if the story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. It really does help the channel out. Take care of yourselves.